Friends, thank you so much for giving me the chance to be here. Merci infiniment pour me donner l'occasion de parler.
Thank you for having me here. Share a few words with you. It's a great pleasure for me to be here with you, among you.
This is an awesome room, by the way. This is incredible. It's a lot of folks here. This is great. Before I go any further, I want to acknowledge that we're gathered on the unceded traditional territories of the Mohawk people, the Mohawk Nation. For me, reconciliation, not just a word. We can't just say it. Anytime we recognize the territories that we're gathered upon, it's important that we also recognize the injustice that First Nations, Indigenous people have suffered historically and continue to face right now. And so, not only do we acknowledge the territories and the injustice, but we also commit collectively, all of us, to remedying that injustice. And for New Democrats, that means we would implement into law the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People.
On behalf of 700,000 committed, dedicated members, CUPE members, I would like to start by thanking Mark Hancock, of course, and Charles Fleury for their leadership. I also would like to thank you. Thank you to you, the delegates, treasurers, health representatives, health and safety representatives, and all those of you who keep fighting to improve the quality of life of workers, men and women alike, coast to coast. Our team of candidates include many extraordinary members, including members of CUPE, and I'm very proud of it. I believe that the majority of them are knocking at the doors as we speak. But I would like us to give them a warm round of applause to these people as well. We have Shanjin Singh in Brampton, Cruz Brennan in Owen Sound, Mick Milanovich in Hamilton, Angela McEwen in Ottawa, Dustin Innes in Richmond, Randy Anderson Fenneld in Delta, Lauren Collins in Victoria, yes indeed, and right here in Montreal, my friend, associate at the NPD, Alexandre Boulris, also my friend.
Friends, I want to talk a little bit about Ontario. A lot of our dear friends are facing a really tough time. We've got education workers and teachers that are facing some really massive cuts being brought in by Mr. Ford. Luckily, you should definitely boo to that, if you like. I want to acknowledge that the workers, the education workers of CUPE were able to get a tentative deal. That's great. Fought hard. But we got to keep in mind that things aren't over. Things are really tough, and the fights are going to continue. We know that with Mr. Ford, exactly like conservatives do, they are going to cut painful cuts to education and healthcare, and it's going to hurt. And so I really appreciate, I'm not surprised, but I really appreciate how CUPE is fighting back, and we stand with you in that fight, all of us together. Friends, the NDP and CUPE, we have a common mission. We have a plan to not only fight the cuts together, we also want to continue to fight privatization, wherever it is. Because we know that it is a threat to public services, it is a threat to working people, and we will always fight it. But my friends, it's not enough to just fight the cuts. It's not enough to just fight privatization. We also have a common mission to expand public services, right? We know that these are the services that workers count on. So we are going to commit to fighting hard, to supporting healthcare workers and long-term care workers. Make sure they have the funding that they need to take care of people. We're going to support the highway workers who do all the important work to keep our roads safe. We're going to support social workers who help out those who are most vulnerable. We're going to be there for them. But these public services that we rely on, that build a better society, there's a threat to those public services. There's a big problem. And I want to put to you, one of the major problems is this, that not everyone is paying their fair share. It's true. We have a system in Canada, in fact around the world, that is rigged. A system where those at the very top continue to enjoy more and more advantages. They have loopholes. That means that they hide their money. They're not paying their fair share. And when they don't pay their fair share, they starve our system of the crucial funding we need to deliver the services that people need. And one of the ways that the wealthiest, the people at the very top, are hiding their money, one of the ways that the richest Canadians are not paying their fair share are tax havens. Now, these tax havens are costing Canadians billions of dollars. We had a recent study pointed out that tax havens alone account for $25 billion of revenue that we're losing. $25 billion a year. Now, I want to make something really clear. This isn't just a chance. This hasn't just happened because. This is a choice that Mr. Trudeau and the Liberal government and previous Conservative governments have made. They have chosen to give the rich and powerful these loopholes. But you know the powerful thing about choice? If they chose to let the richest off the hook, then we can choose to make sure they pay their fair share. Friends, there's another choice. There's another choice that Mr. Trudeau has made. Another choice that Liberals have made. And it's a choice that they made when it comes to the environment. They purposely chose to speak and say nice words about the environment during the 2015 election. Mr. Trudeau went on and on about how important the environment is, how important it was to tackle the climate crisis. He gave beautiful words, pretty words, but they amounted to what? Empty promises. And that was a choice that he made. He chose to talk about the environment, but then buy a pipeline. He chose to talk about the importance of fighting climate crisis, and then exempted the biggest polluters from paying their fair share. He promised in 2015 to end fossil fuel subsidies, but he has continued to subsidize that sector. Now, we have a plan. We have a plan that says we don't have to choose between the economy and the environment. To the young people that went out to the streets in communities across our country, perhaps in your communities, here in Montreal, 500,000 young people took to the streets demanding action. Now, normally it works the other way around, right? Normally it's the adults who tell the kids what you have to do. But in this instance, young people said, we're afraid. We look at the future and we don't know what it holds. We look at the future and we see a lot of despair, a lot of uncertainty. And they demanded action. And they demanded that the government do something. And in face of that, Mr. Trudeau has turned his back on them. Mr. Trudeau chose the powerful. We choose young people. We choose their future. We choose supporting them. We choose the planet. We choose the environment. We believe we can build hundreds and thousands of jobs in the fight against the climate crisis. And we are going to do it together. And that's why our plan is a plan to build 300,000 jobs. We're going to retrofit homes. We're going to end the fossil fuel subsidies and reinvest into clean and renewable energy. We're going to tell our kids that we're going to be there for them. And we're going to fight with every ounce of our skill to build an economy that leaves no worker behind, that leaves no kids behind. We're going to choose their future, and we're going to do it together, my friends. Les néo-démocrates ont un plan.
We, as New Democrats, have a plan. I know that each and every one of you already does a lot. You already make intelligent choices in favor of our planet. I think that it's now time to have a government in Ottawa that is also going to play its share. We're going to give you an example. We will be that example. We're going to be building those electric vehicles. When you open the light switch, we're going to make sure that that energy comes from clean energy. We're going to make sure that all of your travels are greener. And we're also going to make sure that buildings are greener, from Victoria all the way to St. John. All of this has to be part of the solution and not part of the climate problem or climate crisis. Indeed. And when we're going to put forward our plan, we're going to make sure nobody's left aside.
Now, I'm sure you started to notice this, that there's two Justin Trudeaus. There's a Justin Trudeau we see in public, and there's a Justin Trudeau that does different things in private. There's a Justin Trudeau in 2015, who again promised a whole bunch of things that were supposed to make people's lives better. And there's a 2019 version of Mr. Trudeau who just breaks those commitments and makes excuses. Someone who goes behind closed doors and makes deals with the powerful to protect their profits over helping people out. I want to talk about electoral reform. Do you know how many times he mentioned electoral reform in the last campaign? Many, it's true. It's a good guess. 1,800 times. We actually counted it. 1,800 times he promised that there would be reform. Did he deliver it? He didn't deliver it because he learned that what people wanted was proportional representation, and that wouldn't help him. That wouldn't keep power for him and his party. So he chose to abandon it. Now, he fought against Mr. Harper. He criticized Mr. Harper again and again. He promised to change Mr. Harper's war on the environment, and he promised to fight the climate change. And guess why he abandoned that promise after 4 years? He abandoned his promise to do something as simple as ending fossil fuel subsidies. Why was it that he broke that promise? Well, he met with oil and gas lobbyists. His government met with them over 1,500 times in 4 years. Just imagine how many meetings that meant a week. His government met with the powerful at the very top, and instead of listening to those kids who are demanding action, he listened to the powerful, wealthy corporations, the oil and gas sector, and he continues to subsidize billions of dollars to the fossil fuel sector. He continues to exempt the biggest polluters, and he bought a pipeline. Again, these are choices he's making. This isn't just something that happened by chance. These are choices he's making because he's working for the powerful. He's not working for you. And then he promised something else. He promised to be an ally for working people. He promised to be an ally for labor unions. And you know how that ended. Our good friends, the postal workers, were putting forward some action, demanding fairness on two fronts. They wanted to make sure their workers weren't injured, because postal workers were injured 5 times more often than the average for a federal worker. And rural workers were often women, and they were paid less. And they said, we want to be paid fairly. Instead of helping out those workers, what he did was he forced them back to work. He legislated them back to work in the worst way possible. He didn't even allow for debate. He actually did it worse than Mr. Harper, if you can imagine that. And then on top of that, his finance minister and Mr. Trudeau together tried to attack, well, they did attack workers' pensions. They attacked the most vulnerable. People, when they retire, hoping to have dignity, he attacked their livelihoods. He attacked their pensions. On top of that, when our brothers and sisters at Sears faced a massive bankruptcy, the bankruptcy laws meant that workers had no priority. That instead, rich financiers and banks, they got all the priority. Well, what did he do? Nothing. He let them get away with it. I can tell you what our plan is. Our plan is this. We know that if you want to earn a good living, if you want a ticket to the middle class, joining a union is the best way to do it. On top of that, if workers who spend their whole life working hard and sacrificing for a company see that company by chance go into a situation where they're going bankrupt, well, we are going to change the laws that instead of being at the lowest priority, we are going to ensure that workers are the first priority, that their benefits, their wages, their salaries are protected, that their pensions are protected, because we stand up for workers. We got you. Got a little carried away here. I'm just going to ask my friends to roll back a little bit. Now, this time along, he again promises to do something on medication. And we saw in 2015 he made a promise. He promised to lower the cost of medications. A simple promise that would have meant lower costs for families. The promise was this. He said the board that sets the prices for medication asked for a new list of countries. Just a simple thing. A list of countries. With a new list, they would be able to set prices for medications lower. It would save families thousands of dollars. Mr. Trudeau promised to do that in 2015. 4 years later, he didn't do it. Again, we wondered, why wouldn't he do something as simple as just giving a list of countries? It required a legislative change, but giving this list of countries would have allowed our review board that sets prices for medication to lower the cost. Why wouldn't he do something as simple as that? Why wouldn't he help out families that are struggling because medication is so costly? Well, the reason is this. In those 4 years while Mr. Trudeau was in government, his government met with the pharmaceutical lobbyists and the insurance lobbyists. You want to guess how many times? Many is a good answer as well. Many. No, that's a little too many. I wouldn't be surprised though, but over the past 4 years, 875 times or more. And so after 4 years, Mr. Trudeau again chose to protect the profits of the pharmaceutical industry over families who are struggling with the cost of medication. This was a choice he made, not again by chance. This didn't just happen, he chose. And now again, he's promising to do what he said he would do before. And how can we believe him now? Do you believe him now? Hell no. This might be my best follow-up person there. You're my hype person. I'm going to have you at all my speeches. Round of applause for her. And now he says that he's going to bring in place pharmacare. Let's be really clear. He has no plan to bring in pharmacare. He has no plan to make sure we have a universal public system to deliver medication for all. But I can tell you something, that I'm different from Mr. Trudeau. The difference is Mr. Trudeau works for the powerful, he works for the pharmaceutical companies, he works for the lobbyists, he listens to them whenever they say. I don't listen to them, I don't work for them, I work for all of you. And because I work for all of you, I'm going to make sure if you need medication in this country, you use your health card, not your credit card. That everyone gets access to medication in our country. Universal, public, pharmacare for all. Donc, Justin Trudeau a juré.
So Justin Trudeau swore that no relationship was more important than his relationship with the Aboriginals. We know now for decades that the water at Gatineros is polluted with mercury, and this is destroying lives. And when Mr. Trudeau was called on it by an activist within the community, what happened? He laughed at her. Only last week, and only just last week, Justin Trudeau decided to push the children of the First Nations to trial once again. Instead of accepting the settlement saying that the government did discriminate against Aboriginal children, he decided to challenge it. That's not how we can lead any type of relationship, certainly not a reconciliation relationship. And this time, they're not even waiting for the end of the elections to break their promises. Liberals have been speaking of pharmacare for how many years now? 22 years. And Justin Trudeau really led us to believe that this time things would be different. Once again, he said everything that he was supposed to say, and he led us to believe in his promises up until that point where his government met the great pharmaceutical companies, that they met 475 times, 475 meetings, hidden meetings.
Lots of pretty words, but no action. 22 years of promising to act on pharmacare, but no acting. Again, he protects the profits of the big pharma, and he hurts families. And I don't want to talk about why pharmacare is so important. I'm going to give you a couple examples of why it matters so much to me, and it should matter to all of us. I remember I met a young kid, 10 years old, and he lives with a chronic illness. And as a result of this illness, he's got to take medication, he's got to take pills, injections, and he told me, I got to be on top of all of this, and if I don't, I might die, so I got to be very careful. And I was a little taken aback how casually he was talking about the fact that he might die. And he said, no, don't worry about me. I'm okay. He's a 10-year-old kid. He was really confident. Don't worry about me. I'm okay. I can handle this. I know what to do. I can take my medication. I got to take a lot of medication, and I got a lot of injections. So I'm worried about how much it costs my mom and dad. He's a 10-year-old kid, and he's worried about being a burden to his parents. I met a young woman. Her whole life she was healthy, had no need for health care or medication. She was really healthy. And then she got late onset type 1 diabetes. It's a genetic illness, and sometimes it happens late in life. And she thought I would never be someone who would need health care. But then she did. And she was doing her master's late in life. She was in her 20s, late 20s when it happened. And it meant that she had to start taking lots of medication to control her illness. And she had coverage. She said, I have coverage, but despite that, they don't cover all the medication that I need. And I've had to pay thousands and thousands of dollars just to stay alive. And it's one of her stresses, one of the things she's worried about. She's got a good job. She's graduated with her master's degree. She works hard, but she's worried about how much it costs. I met seniors at the doorsteps when I was knocking on doors after Mark Hancock was helping me out. And I met a couple at the door. Two folks, a husband and wife, and they told me that their biggest concern was the cost of medication. And they said they had coverage, both of them, but they had health issues. And their coverage was one that required a $2,500 deductible each. So they had to spend $5,000 as a family before their coverage would kick in. Now, Mr. Scheer says that 95% of Canadians have coverage. Well, with coverage like that, it's really not coverage. You know, and Mr. Trudeau tells these people, tells these families, oh, just wait 4 years. Just wait. It's going to be fine in 4 years. Maybe we'll get around to it. Maybe we'll do another study. Another study that says the same thing, that we need public, national pharmacare for all. We're telling folks we are not going to wait 4 years. That little kid, I'm going to tell him I'm not going to wait anymore to stop feeling like a burden. I'm going to make sure that young woman doesn't feel the pain of having to afford her medication. That senior couple, I'm going to say to them, we're going to make sure you get the medication you need. Because our commitment is universal pharmacare for all. We believe in it. We're going to make it happen. But we're not going to end there. We know that people want healthcare that covers them from head to toe. Healthcare that's there for them when they need it. And Mr. Trudeau put in place the cuts that Mr. Harper planned for, but between Conservatives and Liberals, they've been cutting investments in healthcare for decades. There used to be a 50-50 split. That 50-50 split has now gone to 25-75. That means provincial governments have lost half of what they used to receive in funding. No wonder emergency rooms are packed up, because decisions have been made by Conservative and Liberal governments to make things harder for people. They made it easier for the richest, but harder for people who need health care. And so what I want to say to you is, not only are we going to ensure that there's universal pharmacare for all, but for people who go to a hospital because their tooth is hurting, because they've got a problem with their dental health. We know that you can go into the hospital and get open heart surgery, but if you go in with a problem with your teeth, they give you a painkiller and send you home. It makes no sense in a healthcare system that you can cover such complicated procedures, but they don't cover those procedures that people need for their teeth, for their dental health. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to put in place a universal dental care program that covers every single person in our country. But we're going to start immediately with a plan, a publicly delivered government insurance plan that covers 4 million Canadians. Those who earn $70,000 or less will be immediately covered by 2020 with our plan. We can achieve this. This is going to save thousands of dollars for families. It's going to make a massive difference in their life, and we can get it done. C'est un plan pour garder les gens.
And it's a plan to keep people healthy and to remove pressure currently existing there for the hospitals. And I'll give you a chance to put your headsets on. It's also a plan to ensure that life is less expensive. With public pharmacare, households will save on average 5 cents per dollar every year. So even though you might already have insurance coverage and will have a dental plan, and the average family will save about $1,200 a year.
How are you going to pay for universal pharmacare? How are you going to pay for this dental care program? Well, I'm going to give you a quick example. In the past year, Mr. Trudeau made the following promises, or made the following spending commitments. He bought a pipeline which cost $4.5 billion. In the fall economic statement, he gave $14 billion away to the richest corporations to buy private jets and limousines. He also said to the richest corporations that owed the government $6 billion in loans He said, you know what, you're forgiven. He forgave $6 billion in corporate loans. You right? This is $25 billion in spending, and not a cent of it went to families. Every single dollar went to the wealthiest Canadians, those at the very, very top, the wealthiest corporations. Now, our plan that would immediately cover over 4 million Canadians who don't have coverage for dental care, our plan to cover those 4 million Canadians would cost less than $1 billion, $856 million. That means Mr. Trudeau, in 1 year, spent 25 times more than our one plan to cover 4 million Canadians for their dental care. So it's a matter of choices. That's one. But we're also going to ask those at the very top to pay a little bit more. We're going to tax multi-millionaires. We're going to ask those who have fortunes of over $20 million to pay a little more. With our super wealth tax, we're going to raise $70 billion. We're going to close tax loopholes. We're going to end tax breaks for the biggest corporations. We're going to truly make sure that the richest pay their fair share. Now, Mr. Trudeau is going to say, oh, you can't do this. How can you pay for pharmacare? How can you pay for dental care? Well, I'm going to say to Mr. Trudeau, your finance minister used offshore tax havens. Your current Treasury Board president has used offshore tax havens. 2 of your top cabinet ministers have used offshore tax havens. How can you tell Canadians that we don't have enough to pay for pharmacare, for dental care, if 2 of your most powerful cabinet ministers aren't paying their fair share? We're going to say they have to pay their fair share. We're going to end offshore tax havens and reinvest into people. We're not going to work for the powerful, we're going to work for the people. We're going to ask the richest to pay their fair share, my friends.
My plan consists in enabling people to build a better quality of life. On the other hand, you've got Justin Trudeau, who's invested 90% less in housing than Stephen Harper did, and that's really an achievement. He's done nothing to prevent rising costs in housing in Canada. And I don't want to see young people being forced to leave the neighborhoods where they grew up. And this is why the NDP will build 500,000 new social housing units that are affordable, that people have the means to pay for. As well, we will develop housing subsidies to give Canadians a break for those people who have to wait.
To make sure we look after the people who looked after us, our seniors. Now, CUPE members, you are on the front lines of this crisis. You've seen the impacts of liberal and conservative cuts and inaction firsthand. What that means for our seniors is reduced hours of care, families stretched to the limit, seniors who have to wait for help while workers are run off their feet. To deliver better, we will create a national standard for long-term care that ensures residents get the hours of care and the quality of care they need and deserve. And we'll guarantee the funding is there to provide that care. And we'll enshrine the standards into the Canada Health Act so that no government can make cuts to long-term care funding levels ever again. I want to want to talk about something else that happens in long-term care homes. And it actually happens in hospitals and in healthcare centers and in schools as well. And that's violence against public service workers. I'm truly deeply sorry that this is an issue that I have to talk about. I'm sorry that you have to go through this and that your colleagues and your friends have gone through this. I'm sorry. But we can do a lot better. I know the solutions won't be easy. It's a complicated issue. But I've got to say, when governments ignore the problem, they only make the workplace less safe for everyone. And I truly believe you should not have to settle for that. I believe we can do more, and we will do more. We can develop protections, put in place awareness, make sure we take the steps necessary, that the inaction that we've seen for too long must end. We've got to take a strong stance. No worker should ever fear violence at the workplace. No worker should ever have to go through that. And my commitment to you is to work with you to find those solutions. And thank you for all the work that you do. It's so incredibly important. Thank you. Now, in this election, there's going to be some people that are going to say that we've got to stop conservatives. And I agree. We've got to stop conservatives. They're going to say some things that are going to be appealing to some people. They're going to mention that they're going to put a few dollars in your pockets. They're going to say they're going to cut taxes. And we know that they certainly do cut taxes. The conservatives do that. They cut taxes mostly for the wealthiest, but they might cut some taxes that put some dollars in the pockets of families. But what else are they going to cut? They're going to cut all the services that your families need. They're going to cut healthcare and other public services, and it's going to cost families a lot more. And we got to be sure that we're vigilant. Don't let the conservatives' message punch through. Let's remind people, when they offer a couple of dollars in tax cuts, they're going to take hundreds of dollars away from you in services, and it's going to cost families a lot more. Families are going to end up paying a lot more. And we know what else conservatives do. We've got great or horrible examples of conservatives. We've got Mr. Ford in Ontario. Someone who's already shown what he does to families. He cuts the services they need. He cuts education, cuts healthcare. He cuts services to the most vulnerable, people with autism, autistic kids. He's also another Mr. Deny on the climate crisis. He doesn't get that there is one. So we know that that's something we've got to be vigilant against. And Mr. Scheer, of course, there's massive problems. He's someone who has anti-LGBTQ candidates. He's going to allow anti-choice candidates to run, and they already are running. You know, it's going to be pretty scary with Mr. Scheer. We know it's a problem. We know that he's going to cut services. He's going to challenge important rights. And that's why, to me, it's very concerning that Elizabeth May has said that her Green Party could live with all of that. She said that she's willing to support an Andrew Scheer government. And she can't Photoshop her words. This is what she said. She's also said that she would allow any Green Party member, any Green Party MP to vote however they want on any issue they want. She said this on TV, so she can't change the words. She said that she would not do anything to stop a Green Party MP that wanted to reopen the abortion debate. And she said, in fact, frankly, that's a good thing. Those are her words. And she certainly wouldn't insist that her MPs fight back to work legislation, because we can look to BC, where the Green Party fought against the NDP government when the NDP tried to make it easier to join a union. So we know, my friends, very clearly, the Green Party is no friend of Labour. They're not. But more importantly, when we don't help out working people, it hurts us all. And when we don't support supporting the fact that we need to make sure people can earn a good living and that we fight the climate crisis together, we know that it hurts everyone as well. And so I want to be very clear. I am running to be your Prime Minister, to be the Prime Minister of Canada, to bring in place change that puts people first, that supports the people that need it, that fights for working class people, for our brothers and sisters, not for the very rich. I'm working for all of you. But my friends, I obviously can't control the election. So if voters, if they choose a minority government, and some people say that might happen, if they choose a minority government, I want to make something really clear to you. Unlike Ms. May, who said that she would be willing to support the Conservatives, I've made it crystal clear that I will not support a Conservative government under any circumstance, not whatsoever. New Democrat members, stop Conservatives. We fight Conservatives. We stand up for you.
Dear friends, I don't want Canada to settle for less, and I know that we don't have to settle for less. The elections is a little bit like being around the bargaining table, and I know that CUPE members know exactly how this works. You know that if we accept less now, things are going to get worse in 4 years. Then there are still things that we can count on, but those things will likely disappear. At the bargaining table, would you accept concessions that would hurt workers? Well, no. So let us not accept concessions at the ballot box either.
Justin Trudeau wants you to settle for another 4 years of a government that makes life easier for multimillionaires and mega corporations and harder for the rest of us. Elections are always about choices. Mr. Trudeau chooses oil and gas lobbyists and buys a $4.5 billion pipeline. I choose a new deal for people and the climate. Trudeau helped multi-billion corporations stay out of court, but is dragging Indigenous kids into court. I choose reconciliation. Mr. Trudeau chooses to protect the profits of big drug and insurance companies. I choose the kids who need a dentist or need medication. Justin Trudeau chooses to give another $14 billion in new tax breaks to the biggest corporations. I choose to help people who don't know if they're ever going to be able to afford a home. Here's the thing, my friends. Time and time again, Mr. Trudeau chooses the wealthy and the powerful over you and your families. And now, he's asking you to choose you. He's asking you to choose him. He wants to scare you into choosing a government that doesn't work for working people. But I want to say to you all very clearly, there is another choice. We can build the country of our dreams if we have the courage to fight for more. Mr. Trudeau made his choice. I choose you. So I need your help in this election. Get out and vote this weekend. Make sure you make a plan to vote. Get out and support. Tell your friends they can choose a better way. If you're talking about options, tell them there is a new democratic way to go, my friends. Let's make this happen. Thank you, my friends. Thank you very much. We can choose different. We can get different results. Thank you.